My ex-husband taught my 4-year-old to call their stepdad by my name. The words hit me like a slap across the face. Mommy's making pancakes, my 4-year-old daughter Emma chirped as she skipped through the front door, her purple backpack bouncing against her tiny frame. I froze in the hallway, my hand still on the doorknob. What did you say, sweetheart? Mommy made me pancakes this morning before daycare, she repeated, beaming up at me with those bright green eyes that mirrored my own. With chocolate chips. My stomach dropped. Emma had just returned from her weekend with her father, Derek. There was no way she was talking about me. I'd been at my new job at Henderson Marketing since 7 a.m., and she'd been at his place since Friday evening. Emma, baby, who made you pancakes? I knelt down to her level, trying to keep my voice steady. Mommy did. She giggled and pointed toward the door. You know, Daddy's mommy. The blood drained from my face. Derek's new girlfriend Sarah was 24, blonde, and had been in their lives for exactly 3 months. And now my ex-husband was teaching our daughter to call her mommy. I heard footsteps on the porch and looked up to see Derek's smug face through the screen door. At 35, he still had that cocky grin that used to charm me back in college, before I learned it usually meant he was about to twist the knife. Hey, Jess, he said casually, like he hadn't just dropped a bomb on my Sunday evening. Emma had a great weekend. Sarah's really bonding with her. Can I talk to you for a minute? I stood up, my hands clenched into fists. Outside. Derek shrugged and stepped onto the porch. Behind him, I could see Sarah sitting in his black pickup truck, scrolling through her phone with perfectly manicured nails. What the hell do you think you're doing? I hissed, keeping my voice low so Emma couldn't hear from the living room where she was already settling in front of her coloring books. I don't know what you mean. His innocent act was Oscar-worthy. You're teaching Emma to call Sarah mommy. Are you out of your mind? Derek's fake confusion melted away, replaced by that cold smile I remembered all too well from our divorce proceedings 18 months ago. Sarah's going to be her stepmom soon. Emma needs to get used to it. She has a mother, Derek. Me. I've been her mother for 4 years, not some girl you've been dating for 5 minutes. 3 months, he corrected. And at least Sarah doesn't confuse Emma by bringing random men around. My cheeks burned. Mike isn't random. We've been together for 8 months, and Emma adores him. Right, your rebound guy. The accountant. He said it like Mike worked at a gas station instead of running his own firm. How long before you get bored and trade him in too? I wanted to scream that he was the one who cheated, who'd blown up our marriage with his secretary, cliché and devastating all at once. Instead, I took a deep breath and straightened my shoulders. This stops now, Derek. You don't get to confuse our daughter to spite me. He laughed, actually laughed. Good luck with that, Jess. I can't control what Emma calls people. Kids say the darndest things, right? As he walked back to his truck, calling out an overly cheerful goodbye to Emma, I realized this wasn't just petty revenge. This was war. And my 4-year-old daughter was caught in the crossfire. I stood on the porch for 10 minutes after Derek's taillights disappeared down Maple Street, my hands shaking with rage. The October air bit through my sweater, but I barely felt it. All I could think about was Emma's confused little face when she'd announced that Mommy made her pancakes. When I finally went inside, I found Emma curled up on our worn sectional couch, humming to herself as she colored a princess purple. Mike was in the kitchen, his sleeves rolled up as he finished loading the dishwasher, a sight that still made my heart flutter after 8 months. He looked up when I walked in, and his warm brown eyes immediately clouded with concern. Everything okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. I glanced toward the living room, making sure Emma was out of earshot, then pulled Mike into the hallway by our bedroom. In whispered, furious sentences, I told him everything. He's doing this on purpose, I finished, my voice cracking. He wants to confuse her, to make her think Sarah is her real mom. This is exactly the kind of mind game Derek used to pull with me. Mike's jaw tightened. I'd seen him frustrated before, usually when his biggest client, Morrison Construction, changed their quarterly projections for the 3rd time, but never like this. His hands curled into fists at his sides. That bastard, he muttered. Emma was calling me Mike mommy last week when she was helping me make dinner. I thought it was just kid confusion, but now. My stomach lurched. What do you mean Mike mommy? She kept switching between Mike and mommy when she was talking to me. Like she couldn't figure out what to call me. I didn't think much of it then, but Jesus, Jess, what if Derek's been coaching her to call all parental figures mommy? What if he's trying to make her so confused about family roles that she doesn't know who's who anymore? The implications hit me like ice water. Derek wasn't just trying to elevate Sarah's position, he was systematically undermining Emma's understanding of family structure itself. It was psychological warfare, and our 4-year-old was the casualty. Mommy. Mike mommy. Emma's voice called from the living room. Come see my princess. Mike and I exchanged horrified glances. There it was again. We walked back to the living room, plastering fake smiles on our faces. Emma held up her coloring book, beaming with pride at her decidedly purple princess. That's beautiful, sweetheart, I said, settling beside her on the couch. Tell me about your weekend with Daddy. We went to the park, and Mommy pushed me on the swings really high. Then we got ice cream, and Mommy let me get sprinkles. Emma's face lit up with each memory. And Mommy said I could call her whatever I wanted, but Daddy said I should call her Mommy because that's what big girls do. My vision went red around the edges. Derek had orchestrated this. He'd made it seem like Emma's choice while manipulating her into it. Emma, baby, I said carefully, you know I'm your mommy, right? She tilted her head, suddenly looking much older than 4. Daddy said I could have 2 mommies. Like Madison at preschool has 2 daddies. Smart. Fucking brilliant, actually. Derek had weaponized progressive family values to justify parental alienation. I wanted to drive to his apartment on 5th Street right now and unleash 4 years of suppressed fury. Instead, I kissed Emma's forehead and told her it was time for her bath. But as I helped her out of her weekend clothes, I was already forming a plan. The next morning at Henderson Marketing, I couldn't concentrate on anything. The Riverside Mall campaign layouts blurred together as I sat in my cramped cubicle, obsessively replaying Emma's confused little voice saying Mommy made pancakes. By 10:47 a.m., I'd rewritten the same email to our client 3 times. You look like hell, Jess. My coworker Amanda perched on the edge of my desk, her perfectly styled red hair catching the fluorescent lights. Rough weekend with the ex? Amanda was the only person at work who knew the messy details of my divorce. She'd been through her own custody nightmare 2 years ago with her 7-year-old son Tyler. Derek's teaching Emma to call his girlfriend mommy, I said quietly, glancing around to make sure our boss wasn't within earshot. Amanda's coffee mug froze halfway to her lips. He's what? I filled her in on everything, the pancakes comment, Emma's confusion about Mike, Derek's smug denial on my front porch. Amanda's expression grew darker with each detail. That son of a bitch, she whispered. Jess, this is parental alienation. I've seen this before in my support group. You need to document everything. What do you mean? Start writing down every incident, every date, every conversation. Record phone calls if Illinois allows it, which it does, since it's a one-party consent state. And... She paused, lowering her voice even further. You might want to fight fire with fire. What are you talking about? Amanda glanced around again, then leaned closer. Derek's not the only one who can play games. What's his girlfriend's name again? Sarah. And does Derek have a pet name for her? Something Emma might have heard? I thought back to the few times I'd seen them together at Emma's preschool events. He calls her babe constantly. Sometimes baby. Why? A slow smile spread across Amanda's face. Because turnabout is fair play, honey. If Derek wants to confuse Emma about parental roles, maybe he should get a taste of his own medicine. The idea was so simple it was genius. And so petty it made my chest tight with guilt. But that guilt evaporated completely when I picked Emma up from Little Sprouts daycare that afternoon. Her teacher, Mrs. Chen, pulled me aside by the colorful alphabet wall. Emma was a bit confused today during family drawing time, she said gently. She drew herself with 4 parents, 2 mommies and 2 daddies. When I asked her to explain, she said she has Mommy Jess, Mommy Sarah, Daddy Derek, and Daddy Mike. My heart shattered. She called Mike Daddy? Several times. She seemed genuinely confused about why the other children only had 2 parents. Jessica, I've been teaching preschool for 15 years. This kind of identity confusion in a 4-year-old. It's concerning. That evening, after Emma was asleep, I sat at my kitchen table with a yellow legal pad and started writing. I documented everything I could remember. October 15th, Emma returned from weekend saying Mommy made pancakes, referring to Sarah. October 15th, Emma called Mike Mommy multiple times. October 16th, Mrs. Chen reports Emma drew 4 parents, called Mike Daddy. Then I opened my laptop and researched parental alienation. What I found made my blood run cold. Articles about children who grew up so confused about their family structure they needed therapy. Studies showing the long-term psychological damage of using kids as weapons in custody battles. Derek wasn't just being vindictive. He was potentially damaging Emma's emotional development for years to come. At 11:23 p.m., I made a decision that would change everything. I picked up my phone and started typing a text to my sister Rachel, who lived 3 hours away in Springfield. Can you visit this weekend? I need you to witness something. If Derek wanted to play games with my daughter's mind, I'd play them right back. But this time, I'd be the one holding all the cards. Rachel arrived Saturday morning with a duffel bag and the same determined expression she'd worn when she'd helped me pack my things during the divorce. My sister was 2 years older, taller, and had inherited Dad's stubborn streak that served her well as a family law paralegal. So what's the plan? She asked, settling at my kitchen table with coffee while Emma played in her room upstairs. I need you to hear this for yourself, I said, pulling out my phone. Derek's supposed to call at noon for his weekly check-in with Emma. But at 11:47 a.m., my phone rang with Derek's contact photo, the same cocky grin that now made my skin crawl. You're early, I answered, hitting speakerphone and nodding to Rachel, who immediately started taking notes. Yeah, well, Sarah and I are taking Emma to the zoo tomorrow, so I wanted to talk to her before we finalize plans. His voice was casual, but I caught something underneath, excitement, maybe. Like he was enjoying this. Emma, Daddy's on the phone. I called. She bounded downstairs in her purple dinosaur pajamas, face lighting up. Hi, Daddy. Hey, Princess. Are you excited to see Mommy Sarah tomorrow? She bought you a new dress for the zoo. My stomach clenched as Emma clapped her hands. Yes. Mommy Sarah is so nice. That's right, sweetheart. And remember what we practiced? What do you call Sarah? Mommy. Emma giggled. Mommy Sarah. Rachel's pen stopped moving. Her face had gone pale. Good girl, Derek's voice was warm, proud. Now, what do you call Jess? My heart stopped. Emma looked confused, glancing between me and the phone. Jess, she said uncertainly. No, baby, what did we talk about? Jess is just Jess now. Sarah is your mommy when you're with me, and Jess is, what did we say she was? Emma's little face scrunched with concentration. My first mom? The words hit me like a physical blow. Rachel reached across the table and grabbed my hand. That's right. Derek's voice was bright with false cheer. Your first mom. Very good, Emma. I was shaking so hard I could barely speak. Emma, sweetie, why don't you go get your zoo bag ready upstairs? She skipped away, completely oblivious to the bomb she'd just dropped. Derek, I managed, my voice barely controlled. What the fuck is wrong with you? Language, Jess. Emma might hear. His smugness was palpable through the phone. Look, I'm just helping her understand her family structure. Sarah's going to be her permanent mother figure soon. You're transitional. Transitional? My voice cracked. Come on, we both know you're not exactly stable. New job, new boyfriend every few months. Mike won't last, they never do. But Sarah and I are building something real. Emma needs consistency. Rachel was writing furiously, her face twisted with disgust. You're sick, I whispered. I'm practical. Oh, and Jess? I'd be careful about that boyfriend of yours getting too attached. Emma mentioned he's been acting like her daddy. That's not really appropriate, is it? Maybe I should mention it to my lawyer. You know, just to make sure Emma's not getting confused by mixed signals in your house. The threat was clear as glass. Derek was building a case, painting me as the unstable one while positioning himself and Sarah as Emma's real family. I have to go, Derek continued. Sarah's making lunch. See you tomorrow at 10, Emma, he called loudly enough for her to hear upstairs. The line went dead. Rachel and I sat in silence for a long moment, staring at the phone. Jess, she said quietly, this is worse than I thought. He's not just alienating Emma from you, he's systematically replacing you. I nodded, tears finally spilling over. But underneath the devastation, something else was building. Pure, calculated rage. Get me everything you can on parental alienation law in Illinois, I said, wiping my eyes. And Rachel? Yeah? Cancel your plans for the next few weekends. This is about to get very ugly. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying Derek's voice saying transitional like I was some temporary babysitter who'd overstayed her welcome. At 2:17 a.m., I gave up on rest and crept downstairs to my laptop. I spent the next 3 hours diving deep into Illinois custody law, parental alienation cases, and documentation requirements. What I found was both encouraging and terrifying. Courts were finally starting to recognize parental alienation as psychological abuse, but proving it required extensive evidence, and the burden of proof was on me. By sunrise, I had a plan that made my stomach churn with its calculated cruelty. But Derek had fired the first shot when he taught my daughter to call me her first mom. Now it was my turn. The next morning, Emma bounced around the kitchen in her yellow sundress, chattering about the zoo while I braided her hair. Mike sat at the counter, nursing his coffee and watching me with concerned eyes. He'd been quieter since Friday night, processing everything about Derek's psychological warfare. Emma, baby, I said carefully, testing the first part of my strategy, what's your daddy's special friend's name again? Mommy Sarah, she chirped. Right, but what's her real name? Like how Mike's real name is Michael. Emma's forehead wrinkled in concentration. Sarah? That's right. And you know what? Daddy has a special nickname for Sarah. He calls her babe sometimes, doesn't he? Emma nodded enthusiastically. Yeah. He says come here, babe, and thanks, babe all the time. Mike looked up from his coffee, understanding dawning in his eyes. I caught his gaze and mouthed trust me. Well, Emma, here's something fun, I continued, my heart hammering against my ribs. When you're at Daddy's house, you could call him babe too. Like how you call Sarah mommy. It's like a family nickname game. Emma's eyes lit up with the delight only a 4-year-old can have for something that sounds like sanctioned misbehavior. I can call Daddy babe? Only at Daddy's house, I said quickly. It's a special game between you and him. Just like calling Sarah mommy is special. When Derek's black pickup pulled into my driveway at exactly 10 a.m., I walked Emma out with her overnight bag, my phone recording in my pocket. Sarah was in the passenger seat again, scrolling through Instagram with those perfectly manicured nails, but today I barely glanced at her. Ready for the zoo, princess? Derek asked, that familiar cocky grin spreading across his face. Yes, babe. Emma announced cheerfully. Derek's smile froze. What did you say? I'm ready to go to the zoo, babe. Emma repeated, bouncing on her toes with excitement. Sarah's head snapped up from her phone. She looked between Derek and Emma with confusion and something that might have been irritation. Emma, sweetheart, you call me Daddy, Derek said slowly, his voice tight with forced patience. But you call Mommy Sarah babe all the time. Emma protested with 4-year-old logic. Mommy Jess said it's like a family nickname game. Derek's eyes cut to mine like razors. I kept my expression perfectly innocent, the same mask of casual indifference he'd worn on my porch a week ago. Did she now? He said through clenched teeth. Kids say the darndest things, right? I replied sweetly, throwing his own words back at him. Sarah leaned forward in the truck. Derek, what is she talking about? Come on, babe. Emma said, tugging on Derek's hand. Let's go see the lions. I watched Derek's jaw clench as Emma climbed into her car seat, still calling him babe with innocent enthusiasm. Sarah's face was flushed, her Instagram scrolling forgotten as she processed the implications of a 4-year-old calling her boyfriend by his pet name for her. As they pulled away, Emma waving enthusiastically from her window, I felt the first surge of satisfaction I'd experienced in weeks. The game had officially begun. By Sunday evening, my phone had been buzzing with increasingly frantic texts from Derek. I ignored the first few, but curiosity finally got the better of me around 7 p.m. Derek 2:15 p.m., fix this now. Asterisk Derek 3:42 p.m., Emma won't stop calling me babe in front of everyone. Sarah is furious. Asterisk. Asterisk Derek 4:58 p.m., I'm serious Jessica. This ends today. Asterisk. Asterisk Derek 6:33 p.m., you're playing with fire. I can make your life hell in court. Asterisk. Each message was more desperate than the last. I screenshotted every single one, adding them to my growing documentation file. Rachel had texted earlier saying she'd found a family lawyer in Springfield who specialized in parental alienation cases, someone named Catherine Morrison who had a reputation for being ruthless when children's well-being was at stake. Mike found me at the kitchen table, scrolling through Derek's messages with a satisfied smirk. Judging by your expression, Operation Babe was a success, he said, settling beside me with 2 glasses of wine. Better than I hoped. I showed him the texts. Apparently Emma called him babe in front of the zookeeper, the cashier at the gift shop, and Sarah's parents, who they met for dinner. Mike's eyebrows shot up. They introduced Emma to Sarah's parents already? After 3 months? A cold realization settled in my chest. Mike, what if Derek's more serious about Sarah than I thought? What if he's not just trying to confuse Emma? What if he's actually planning to replace me permanently? Before Mike could answer, my phone rang. Derek's name flashed across the screen, and this time I didn't hesitate to answer, hitting speakerphone immediately. Hi Derek, I said sweetly. How was the zoo? Cut the innocent act, Jessica. His voice was strained, exhausted. I know exactly what you're doing. I'm not doing anything. Emma just picked up on your family dynamics, that's all. Kids are so observant, aren't they? Sarah thinks this is hilarious, he said bitterly. She spent the entire dinner explaining to her parents that Emma calls everyone random names because her mother doesn't provide consistent boundaries. My satisfaction curdled. Sarah said what? Oh, you don't like that? Derek's familiar smugness crept back into his voice. Sarah has some very interesting observations about your parenting style, actually. She's noticed Emma has trouble with authority figures, difficulty understanding appropriate social boundaries, problems distinguishing between family and non-family relationships. She's known Emma for 12 weeks, I said through clenched teeth. She has a degree in child development from Northwestern, Jessica. She knows what she's talking about. And she's concerned, we both are, that Emma's confusion about family roles stems from instability in your household. Mike's hand found mine under the table, squeezing tight. What's that supposed to mean? I asked. Moving in your boyfriend after 8 months? Having Emma call him Mike Daddy? Creating inconsistent rules between households? Sarah thinks Emma might benefit from a more stable primary residence. The blood drained from my face. Derek wasn't just playing games anymore, he was building a custody case, using my own retaliation against him as evidence of my unfitness as a mother. You can't be serious, I whispered. Dead serious. Sarah's already spoken to her family's lawyer, the same firm that handled her parents' estate planning. Apparently, they have some very good family law attorneys. The line went quiet except for the sound of my heart hammering against my ribs. Derek, I said carefully, what exactly are you planning? What I should have done 18 months ago, he replied. Emma deserves a stable home with 2 parents who can provide consistency. Sarah and I can give her that. The call ended, leaving Mike and me staring at the phone in stunned silence. I'd started a war thinking I was fighting for my daughter. Now I was realizing I might lose her completely. That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Emma's confused little face asking why I was only her first mom. By 3 a.m., I was sitting at my laptop again, frantically researching custody modification laws and Sarah's claims about child development degrees. What I found made my stomach drop to the floor. Sarah Mitchell had graduated magna cum laude from Northwestern with a degree in early childhood development. She'd worked at a prestigious private preschool in Lincoln Park for 2 years before quitting last month. Her LinkedIn profile was a parade of glowing recommendations about her intuitive understanding of child psychology and exceptional ability to create stable learning environments. On paper, she looked like a perfect stepmother. Better than that, she looked more qualified to raise Emma than I was. My business degree from state and my marketing job suddenly felt pathetic in comparison. What judge wouldn't be impressed by a child development expert who'd identified concerning behavioral patterns in a 4-year-old? Mike found me at 5:30 a.m., still hunched over my laptop in yesterday's clothes. Jess, you need to sleep, he said gently, but I barely heard him. Look at this, I said, pointing to Sarah's professional headshot on the preschool website. She specialized in attachment therapy and family transition counseling. Derek didn't pick some random girlfriend, Mike. He picked someone who could build a case against me. Mike peered at the screen, his face growing grim. When did she quit her job? September 15th. The date was burned into my memory now. Right when Derek started getting serious about her. Right before they started the mommy campaign with Emma. That's not a coincidence. No, it's not. I scrolled down to Sarah's published articles on child development. Look at this one, recognizing signs of parental inconsistency in preschool-aged children. She literally wrote the playbook on what Derek's accusing me of. My phone buzzed with a text from Rachel, * called that lawyer. Catherine Morrison can see you Wednesday at 2 p.m. This is serious, Jess. Don't wait. *. But before I could respond, another message came through, this one from Derek, * Sarah wants to meet with you. Coffee today at 11 a.m., Starbucks on 5th Street. Come alone. We can discuss this like adults. *. Mike read over my shoulder and immediately shook his head. Don't go. It's obviously a trap. Maybe. Or maybe it's my chance to figure out exactly what they're planning. I stood up, my decision already made. I need to know what I'm up against, Mike. If Sarah's building a psychological profile of Emma, I have to understand her angle. Then I'm coming with you. No. I kissed his forehead, breathing in his familiar scent of coffee and aftershave. Derek said come alone, and I don't want to give them any ammunition about you being too involved in Emma's life. They're already twisting that against me. At 10:45 a.m., I sat in my Honda outside the Starbucks, watching Derek and Sarah through the window. They were at a corner table, 2 manila folders spread between them like battle plans. Sarah was taking notes in neat handwriting while Derek gestured emphatically. They looked like lawyers preparing for trial. When I walked in, Sarah stood immediately and extended her hand with a practiced smile. Up close, she was even prettier than I'd realized, flawless skin, perfectly styled blonde hair, and clothes that screamed expensive even though they were casual. She looked like the kind of woman Derek had always wanted but couldn't afford during our marriage. Jessica, thank you for coming, she said warmly. I know this situation is difficult for everyone. Her voice was soft, professional, the same tone I imagined she used with concerned parents at the preschool. It made my skin crawl. Let's skip the pleasantries, I said, sliding into the chair across from them. What do you want? Derek and Sarah exchanged a look that felt rehearsed. We want what's best for Emma, Sarah said, folding her hands on the table. And frankly, Jessica, what's happening right now isn't healthy for her development. The confusion between households, the inconsistent authority figures, the way she's being caught in the middle of adult conflicts, Derek added, his voice taking on a concerned father tone that made me want to throw my latte in his face. You mean the conflict she started by teaching her to call you mommy? I shot back. Sarah's expression remained perfectly calm. I understand you're upset about that, but from a child development perspective, Emma was already showing signs of attachment confusion before Derek and I addressed the family structure issue. Attachment confusion? I repeated, my voice rising slightly before I caught myself. Emma was perfectly fine until you two started playing games with her head. Sarah opened one of the manila folders and pulled out what looked like a professional assessment form. Actually, I've been documenting Emma's behavioral patterns since Derek and I became serious. As someone with experience in early childhood development, I noticed several concerning indicators. She slid the paper across to me. My hands trembled as I read her neat handwriting. * September 22nd, Emma unable to identify primary caregiver when asked directly. Responded with I have lots of mommies and daddies. Asterisk. Asterisk September 29th, exhibited anxiety when discussing home routines. Mentioned different rules at Jess's house versus daddy's house. Asterisk. October 8th, called unfamiliar man at playground daddy Mike shows pattern of inappropriate attachment to mother's romantic partners. You've been psychoanalyzing my daughter? My voice was deadly quiet now. I've been caring about her well-being, Sarah corrected. Emma talks constantly about Mike daddy this, Mike daddy that. She's clearly seeking a stable father figure, which suggests unmet needs in her primary household. Derek leaned forward, his expression fake sympathetic. Jess, we're not trying to hurt you. But Emma needs consistency. She needs to understand family boundaries. So you decided Sarah should be called mommy? Children adapt better to family transitions when roles are clearly defined, Sarah said, her voice taking on a lecturing tone. The research shows that blended families function best when step-parents are integrated into parental roles rather than maintaining artificial distinctions that confuse children. I stared at her perfect, composed face and realized Derek hadn't just found himself a girlfriend. He'd recruited an expert witness. What exactly are you proposing? I asked. Derek and Sarah exchanged another look. This time, Derek nodded slightly, like giving her permission to continue. We think Emma would benefit from a more structured custody arrangement, Sarah said carefully. Perhaps transitioning to a primary residence with us, with regular visitation with you. It would eliminate the confusion between households and provide her with the stability she needs. The coffee shop around us seemed to fade away. You want to take Emma away from me? We want to prioritize Emma's psychological development, Sarah corrected. I've seen too many children struggle with divided loyalties and inconsistent parenting approaches. Emma is already showing signs of emotional distress. What signs? I demanded. Sarah flipped to another page in her folder. Regression in potty training, she had 2 accidents at Derek's last weekend. Sleep disruption, she told me she has scary dreams about having too many families. And increased defiance, she started refusing to follow simple instructions when she's confused about which adult is in charge. My heart was hammering so hard I could barely think straight. Emma hadn't mentioned any nightmares to me. But then again, she'd been quieter lately, more clingy when I put her to bed. This is insane, I whispered. This is documented behavioral analysis from someone with professional training, Derek said firmly. Sarah's not just playing house here, Jess. She knows what she's talking about. And you know what I think? Sarah leaned forward slightly, her professional mask slipping just enough to show something colder underneath. I think you know Emma's struggling too. That's why you reacted so defensively when Derek tried to create clearer family structures. That's why you're playing these petty games, teaching her to call him inappropriate names. You want to discuss inappropriate? I stood up abruptly, my chair scraping against the floor. How about a 24-year-old child development expert conveniently quitting her job right when she starts dating a divorced father? How about building a psychological case file on a 4-year-old without her mother's consent? Sarah's cheeks flushed, but her voice remained steady. I resigned from Bright Beginnings because I wanted to focus on family. My relationship with Derek and Emma is my priority now. Your relationship with Emma, I repeated. After 3 months. 3 months of consistent, professional observation, Derek interjected. Sarah has more formal training in child psychology than either of us, Jess. Maybe it's time to listen to someone who actually knows what they're talking about. I grabbed my purse, my entire body shaking with rage. You want a custody fight, Derek? You'll get one. But don't pretend this is about Emma's well-being when you're the one who started confusing her in the first place. As I headed for the door, Sarah's voice followed me. Jessica, Emma mentioned something interesting yesterday. She said Mike Daddy told her she could live with him forever if she wanted to. That's quite an assumption for your boyfriend to make, don't you think? I froze with my hand on the door handle. Mike had never said anything like that, but if Emma had misunderstood something he'd said, or if Sarah was twisting an innocent comment. We'll see you in court, I said without turning around. But as I walked to my car, Sarah's words echoed in my head. Because the terrifying truth was, I wasn't entirely sure what Mike might have said to Emma when I wasn't listening. And if Derek and Sarah could twist my retaliation into evidence of my instability, what could they do with an overheard comment about forever? I drove home in a haze of panic, Sarah's words replaying on an endless loop. Emma said Mike Daddy told her she could live with him forever. When had that conversation happened? What exactly had Mike said? By the time I pulled into my driveway, I'd convinced myself that Derek and Sarah had found the smoking gun that would destroy my custody case before it even began. Mike was in the garage, organizing his fishing gear for a weekend trip with his brother. He looked up when I stumbled through the door, took one look at my face, and immediately set down the tackle box. Jesus, Jess. What happened? Did you tell Emma she could live with us forever? The words tumbled out before I could stop them. Mike's face went blank with confusion. What? When would I have? Sarah says Emma mentioned it yesterday. That you told her she could live with you forever if she wanted to. I was pacing now, my hands shaking as I ran them through my hair. Mike, if that's true, if there's any way they can twist that into you overstepping boundaries. Slow down. Mike caught my shoulders, forcing me to stop pacing. I never said anything like that to Emma. The only conversation we had about living arrangements was when she asked if I was going to stay here when she grows up. I said something like, I hope so, kiddo, but that's it. You hope so? My voice cracked. Mike, they're building a case that I'm unstable, that I'm confusing Emma with inappropriate relationships. If Sarah can claim you're making permanent family promises, then she's lying, Mike said firmly. Or twisting a completely innocent comment into something sinister. I told him everything about the coffee meeting, Sarah's behavioral documentation, her claims about Emma's regression, the professional assessment forms that made me look like a negligent mother who couldn't recognize my own daughter's distress. Mike's jaw tightened with each detail. She quit her job to build a custody case against you. This was premeditated, Jess. But what if she's right about some of it? I sank onto his workbench, the weight of the morning crushing down on me. What if Emma really is having nightmares? What if I missed signs of anxiety because I was so focused on fighting Derek? Hey. Mike lifted my chin, forcing me to meet his eyes. You're an incredible mother. Emma adores you. Don't let them get in your head. But it was too late. Sarah's professional assessment had planted seeds of doubt that were already taking root. Had I been so busy building my new life that I'd missed my daughter's emotional struggles? Was Emma really confused about family boundaries, or had Derek and Sarah manufactured that confusion to justify their plan? My phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. Catherine Morrison moved your appointment to tomorrow at 10 a.m. Says it's urgent based on what I told her. Also found something interesting about Sarah Mitchell. Call me ASAP. Asterisk. I dialed Rachel immediately, stepping away from Mike so I could pace again. Thank God, Rachel answered on the first ring. Jess, I did some digging on Sarah's background. What did you find? She didn't just quit Bright Beginnings preschool. She was asked to resign after parents complained about her overstepping professional boundaries with their kids. Apparently, she was conducting unauthorized developmental assessments and sharing concerns about children's home lives without parental consent. My heart stopped. Are you serious? Dead serious. I found 3 parents who were willing to go on record about Sarah's inappropriate behavior. One mother said Sarah suggested her 5-year-old needed family therapy after the kid mentioned his parents arguing. Another said Sarah questioned her daughter extensively about her father's new girlfriend, then presented a written concern report without permission. She's done this before, I whispered. Gets better. Guess who represented Bright Beginnings in the employment dispute? Morrison, Klein and Associates. Catherine Morrison personally handled Sarah's resignation settlement. The implications hit me like lightning. The same lawyer Derek mentioned? Sarah's family's firm? That's what I thought too, but no. Different Morrison entirely. Our Catherine Morrison knows Sarah's history, and she's very interested in your case. For the first time in hours, I felt like I could breathe. Rachel, you're a genius. Save the praise for tomorrow. Catherine wants to see all your documentation, and Jess? She said to bring Emma's daycare records. If Sarah's right about behavioral changes, Mrs. Chen would have noticed them too. After I hung up, Mike found me standing in our kitchen, staring at Emma's artwork covering the refrigerator. Crayon drawings of stick figures holding hands, purple dinosaurs, and at the very top, a recent picture labeled my family in 4-year-old handwriting. The drawing showed 4 figures, me, Emma, Mike, and in the corner, almost like an afterthought, Derek. No Sarah in sight. She drew this last week, I said quietly, pointing to the picture. Before Derek's custody threat, before Sarah's behavioral assessments. Look who Emma considers her real family. Mike studied the drawing, his expression softening. She put me right next to you too. Because that's how she sees us. As a unit. I turned to face him, decision crystallizing in my mind. Mike, what Derek and Sarah are doing, it's not just about custody. They're trying to rewrite Emma's entire understanding of family to justify replacing me. Then we fight back with the truth. No, I said, pulling out my phone. We fight back with everything. I started typing a text to Catherine Morrison. Asterisk, can you move our meeting to tonight? I have new information about Sarah Mitchell that changes everything. Asterisk. If Derek wanted to wage psychological warfare using a disgraced child development expert, he picked the wrong mother to target. Emma was mine. And I wasn't giving her up without destroying them both. Catherine Morrison's office was nothing like I'd expected. Instead of intimidating mahogany and leather, her downtown Springfield practice felt warm and inviting, with family photos scattered across bookshelves and a small play area in the corner for young clients. Catherine herself was in her 50s, with silver-streaked hair and the kind of steady presence that immediately put me at ease. Rachel filled me in on the basics, she said, settling across from me with Emma's file spread between us. But I need to understand the timeline. When exactly did Derek first introduce the mommy concept with Sarah? I walked her through everything, from that first Sunday evening when Emma announced Sarah had made pancakes, to yesterday's coffee shop ambush with Sarah's behavioral documentation. Catherine took notes in precise handwriting, occasionally asking for specific dates or exact quotes. The first mom comment is particularly concerning, she said, tapping her pen against the legal pad. That suggests systematic replacement language, not organic family bonding. But what about Sarah's professional background? Her child development degree? The question had been eating at me since Rachel's revelations. Even with the Bright Beginnings situation, she still has legitimate credentials. Catherine's expression darkened. About that. I made some calls after Rachel contacted me. Sarah's resignation from Bright Beginnings was actually a termination that was softened to avoid litigation. 3 separate families filed complaints about her conducting unauthorized psychological evaluations on their children. My stomach clenched. The same thing she's doing to Emma. Exactly. But here's where it gets interesting. Catherine pulled out a thick manila folder. Sarah Mitchell was also involved in a custody dispute 2 years ago in Cook County. She was dating a divorced father named Marcus Webb, and she compiled similar behavioral assessments on his 7-year-old daughter to support his petition for primary custody. What happened? The judge threw out her documentation as inadmissible and potentially harmful to the child. The court ruled that Sarah had exceeded appropriate boundaries and was manufacturing evidence of parental alienation where none existed. Catherine slid the court documents across to me. Marcus Webb lost his custody modification request and was ordered into family therapy. I stared at the papers, Marcus Webb's name swimming before my eyes. So Sarah has done this before. This is her pattern. It appears so. She targets divorced fathers, positions herself as a child development expert, then builds cases against the biological mothers. Catherine's voice was grim. The concerning part is that she's gotten better at it. Her documentation on Emma is more sophisticated than what I saw in the Webb case. More sophisticated how? She's being careful to frame everything as observations rather than assessments. She's noting behavioral changes without explicitly claiming causation. And she's involving Derek more directly in the documentation process, so it looks like concerned co-parenting rather than calculated manipulation. My hands were shaking as I processed the implications. So she's learned from her mistakes. That's my concern. But Jessica, here's the good news, this pattern works in your favor. I can subpoena the Webb case records and potentially contact other families who've dealt with Sarah's interference. If we can establish a history of this behavior, it completely undermines her credibility. Catherine leaned forward, her expression shifting into what I imagined was her courtroom mode. However, I need you to understand something. Derek and Sarah aren't just playing games anymore. They're building toward a formal custody modification petition. Sarah's behavioral documentation, combined with your recent retaliation with the babe incident, gives them grounds to argue that Emma's best interests would be served by a change in primary custody. But Emma's happy with me, I protested. She's thriving. I believe that. But we need to prove it systematically. Which brings me to my next question: when was Emma's last pediatric appointment? I rifled through my phone calendar. 6 weeks ago. Dr. Martinez said she was developing perfectly normally. I want you to schedule another appointment immediately. We need current medical documentation of Emma's physical and emotional health. If Sarah's claims about regression and anxiety were true, there would be medical indicators. Catherine handed me a business card. This is Dr. Susan Chen, no relation to Emma's teacher, different Chen entirely. She's a child psychologist who specializes in custody evaluations. I want her to do a comprehensive assessment of Emma's mental health and attachment patterns. Won't that traumatize Emma? Having some stranger psychoanalyze her? Dr. Chen is excellent with children. Emma will think she's just playing games and talking about her family. But Jessica, this is crucial. We need professional documentation that contradicts Sarah's claims before Derek files his petition. I nodded, already pulling out my phone to start making appointments. One more thing, Catherine said, her voice taking on a warning tone. No more retaliation games. No more teaching Emma to call Derek by Sarah's pet names. From this moment forward, everything you do needs to demonstrate that you're the mature, stable parent who puts Emma's well-being first. What if Derek escalates things? Document everything, but don't respond in kind. Let Derek and Sarah show their true colors while you take the high road. Catherine's smile was sharp as a blade. Trust me, Jessica. They're about to hang themselves with their own rope. The next morning, I was barely through the door at Henderson Marketing when my phone rang. Emma's daycare number flashed across the screen, and my stomach immediately dropped. Ms. Rodriguez? This is Mrs. Chen at Little Sprouts. I need you to come in immediately. There's been an incident with Emma. My hands went cold. What kind of incident? Is she hurt? She's physically fine, but Jessica, she's very upset. She's been crying for the past hour asking for her real mommy and won't let any of us comfort her. She keeps saying she's confused about who her family is. I was already grabbing my purse, ignoring Amanda's concerned look from the next cubicle. I'll be there in 10 minutes. There's something else, Mrs. Chen continued, her voice careful. A woman came by earlier this morning claiming to be Emma's stepmother. She said she was authorized to pick Emma up for a doctor's appointment. The world tilted sideways. What woman? Blonde, mid-20s. She had Emma's full name and your ex-husband's contact information, but when I asked for written authorization, she became quite insistent. She said she was conducting a welfare check because Emma had been expressing anxiety about daycare. Sarah. That manipulative bitch had actually shown up at Emma's school. Mrs. Chen, under no circumstances is anyone except Derek or myself authorized to pick up Emma. Did you call Derek? I tried, but his phone went straight to voicemail. That's when the woman left, but Jessica. Emma saw the whole interaction. She's been asking if the nice mommy was coming back, and when I explained that only real parents can pick her up from school, she broke down completely. I was running through the parking lot now, my heels clicking against asphalt as rage and panic battled in my chest. I'm 2 blocks away. When I burst through the daycare doors, I found Emma huddled in Mrs. Chen's office, her face blotchy and tear-streaked. The moment she saw me, she launched herself into my arms with desperate force. Mommy. The pretty lady said she was my mommy too, but Mrs. Chen said no, and I don't understand why I have so many mommies. The words tumbled out between sobs, breaking my heart into jagged pieces. Shoo, baby girl, I whispered, holding her tight while fury burned behind my eyes. I'm your only mommy. The pretty lady was wrong. Mrs. Chen closed her office door and sat across from us, her expression grave. Jessica, in 15 years of running this daycare, I've never seen a child so confused about basic family structure. Emma spent 20 minutes trying to draw her family tree and kept erasing people because she couldn't figure out where they belonged. She handed me Emma's artwork, a piece of paper covered in erased pencil marks and tear stains. In the center, Emma had drawn herself as a tiny stick figure surrounded by question marks. What exactly did Sarah say to her? She told Emma she was Mommy Sarah and that she'd come to take her somewhere special. When I asked Emma if she knew this woman, she said that's Daddy's mommy, but Mommy Jess says I can only have one mommy, but Daddy says I can have 2 mommies, and I don't know which mommy is right. I closed my eyes, feeling the full weight of Derek and Sarah's psychological manipulation crashing down on my 4-year-old daughter. They weren't just trying to confuse Emma anymore, they were actively traumatizing her. Mrs. Chen, I need to ask you something important. Have you noticed any behavioral changes in Emma over the past few weeks? She hesitated, glancing at Emma who had finally stopped crying and was coloring quietly in the corner. Honestly? Yes. She's been more withdrawn during group activities, and she started asking other children how many parents they have. Yesterday, she told Marcus that he was lucky because he only had one mommy and one daddy and wasn't confused like her. My phone buzzed with a text from Derek, heard there was some confusion at daycare today. Sarah was just trying to help. Maybe it's time we discuss that custody arrangement more seriously. The calculated cruelty of it took my breath away. Sarah's unauthorized pickup attempt wasn't a mistake, it was a deliberate escalation designed to create exactly this kind of emotional crisis for Emma. And Derek's immediate text proved they'd coordinated the whole thing. I stared at Derek's text, my hands trembling with rage as Emma colored innocently beside me. The timing was too perfect, too calculated. Sarah's welfare check followed immediately by Derek's message about custody arrangements. They'd orchestrated this entire emotional breakdown. Mrs. Chen, I said carefully, I need you to write down everything that happened this morning. Every word Sarah said, exactly what time she arrived, how Emma reacted. Can you do that for me? Of course. Jessica, I have to ask, is there something going on with Emma's custody situation? Because what happened today felt very deliberate. Before I could answer, my phone rang. Catherine Morrison's name flashed across the screen, and I stepped into the hallway to take the call. Jessica, I just got off the phone with Dr. Susan Chen's office. Someone called this morning claiming to be Emma's guardian and tried to schedule an emergency psychological evaluation. Catherine's voice was sharp with anger. They used your name but couldn't provide Emma's social security number when pressed for verification. The pieces clicked together like a nightmare puzzle. Sarah. She's trying to get to Emma through multiple channels. It gets worse. I received a courtesy call from a colleague at Morrison, Klein & Associates. Apparently Derek's lawyer reached out asking about expedited custody hearings. They're moving fast, Jessica. My knees went weak. How fast? They could file a petition as early as next week if they have enough documentation. And based on what happened at Emma's daycare today, I think Sarah just manufactured the final piece of evidence she needed. I glanced back through the office window where Emma was now lying on the floor, drawing what looked like a house with multiple doors. Each door had a different stick figure family standing in front of it. Catherine, Emma's having a complete breakdown. She drew herself surrounded by question marks because she doesn't understand her own family structure anymore. Document everything. Take photos of her drawings, get Mrs. Chen's written statement, and Jessica, I need you to call Derek immediately. Record the conversation if possible. I want him to explain Sarah's daycare visit on the record. After hanging up, I knelt beside Emma and gently touched her shoulder. Sweetheart, can you tell me about your picture? She looked up with those bright green eyes, now dulled with confusion. It's all the houses where I have families. This one is your house with Mike Daddy, and this one is Daddy's house with Mommy Sarah, and this one. She pointed to a third door. This one is for when I get too confused and need to live somewhere else. My heart shattered. Baby, what do you mean live somewhere else? Mommy Sarah said sometimes little girls who have too many families need to stay with special helpers until their mommies and daddies figure things out. Emma's voice was matter of fact, but her bottom lip trembled. She said I might be one of those little girls if I keep getting confused. The manipulation was so sophisticated, so psychologically cruel, that for a moment I couldn't even process it. Sarah had planted the idea that Emma might be removed from both homes if she couldn't navigate their manufactured chaos. I pulled out my phone and hit record, then dialed Derek's number. He answered on the second ring. Jess, I was hoping you'd call. How's Emma handling everything? You mean how is she handling your girlfriend terrorizing her at daycare? I kept my voice level despite the fury burning in my chest. Terrorizing? Derek's laugh sounded forced. Sarah was concerned about Emma's well-being. She wanted to make sure our daughter was okay. Our daughter is having a psychological breakdown because you two have systematically destroyed her understanding of family structure. She drew herself surrounded by question marks. Derek. Question marks. There was a long pause. Then, maybe that's because she's getting mixed messages at your house. Sarah mentioned Mike's been making some pretty significant promises about your future together. Sarah lied. Did she? Because Emma told her that Mike said she'd always have a home with you too, no matter what happens with me. That sounds like parental alienation to me, Jess. My blood ran cold. Emma must have mentioned Mike's innocent comment about hoping to stay in our lives, and Sarah had twisted it into evidence of overstepping boundaries. Derek, your girlfriend just told my 4-year-old daughter that she might need to live with special helpers if she stays confused about her family. That's not concern, that's psychological abuse. Another pause, longer this time. Sarah has professional training, Jessica. If she's concerned about Emma's stability. Sarah was fired from her last job for exactly this kind of manipulation, I interrupted. Did she mention her history at Bright Beginnings? Or the custody case in Cook County where her professional assessments were thrown out by a judge? The silence stretched so long I thought Derek had hung up. Finally, I don't know what game you're playing, but Emma needs consistency. And right now, the most stable environment we can offer is with Sarah and me. Over my dead body. That might not be your choice much longer, Derek said quietly. Sarah's documentation is pretty compelling. Combined with today's incident, Emma breaking down at school, being unable to identify her primary family, well, let's just say we have options. The call ended, leaving me staring at my phone in the fluorescent hallway of my daughter's daycare. Emma appeared beside me, tugging on my jacket. Mommy, can we go home to Mike Daddy? I want to show him my confused picture. As I lifted her into my arms, I realized Derek was right about one thing. This wasn't going to be my choice much longer. Unless I found a way to destroy them first. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with Emma's confused picture spread before me, my laptop open to custody law websites, and my phone buzzing with increasingly frantic messages from Derek. Each text was more desperate than the last, but it was a voicemail from Sarah at 11:47 p.m. that made my blood freeze. Jessica, this is Sarah Mitchell. I think we got off on the wrong foot today. I wanted you to know that Derek and I have scheduled a family therapy session with Dr. Patricia Williams on Thursday at 3 p.m. Emma really needs professional support through this transition, and Dr. Williams has experience helping children adjust to new family structures. Derek will pick Emma up from daycare for the appointment. I hope you'll consider joining us, for Emma's sake. I replayed the message 3 times, each word dripping with false concern. Then I googled Dr. Patricia Williams. My stomach dropped. Williams was a licensed family therapist, but her practice specialized in high-conflict custody situations and parental alienation assessment. Her website featured testimonials from fathers who'd successfully gained primary custody after her evaluations. Sarah wasn't just building a case anymore. She was bringing in professional reinforcement. I called Catherine Morrison's emergency line immediately. They can't take Emma to therapy without my consent, I said the moment she answered. That's court-ordered joint custody. I have equal say in medical decisions. Technically, yes. But Jessica, if Emma has a breakdown during the session and Williams determines she's being psychologically harmed by the custody arrangement. Catherine's voice was grim. Emergency custody orders can happen within hours if there's documented evidence of a child in crisis. So what do I do? You beat them to it. I'm calling Dr. Susan Chen first thing tomorrow morning. We need Emma evaluated by our expert before Derek and Sarah get her in front of Williams. I hung up and immediately started researching Dr. Patricia Williams more thoroughly. What I found in the online legal databases made my hands shake. Williams had been involved in 17 custody modifications in the past 2 years. In 14 of those cases, she'd recommended children be removed from their mother's primary care. Sarah hadn't chosen a random therapist. She'd selected someone with a track record of supporting exactly the outcome they wanted. At 6:23 a.m., my phone rang with an unknown local number. Ms. Rodriguez? This is Dr. Susan Chin. Catherine Morrison asked me to call you directly. I've had a chance to review the information she sent over, and I'm very concerned about what's happening to your daughter. Can you see Emma today? That's why I'm calling so early. I had a cancellation at 10 a.m., and given the circumstances, I think we need to move quickly. But Jessica, I need you to understand something. If Emma is genuinely experiencing psychological distress from parental alienation, I'm mandated to report it. Report it to who? Child Protective Services, potentially the family court. My job is to protect Emma's well-being, regardless of which parent that favors. The implication was clear. If Dr. Chin found that Derek and Sarah were right about Emma's confusion being harmful, I could lose custody even faster. But if I didn't get Emma evaluated by someone neutral, Derek and Sarah's handpicked therapist would control the narrative completely. I'll bring her at 10, I said. 2 hours later, I was sitting in Dr. Chin's waiting room, watching Emma play with wooden blocks while my future hung in the balance. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was voluntarily taking my daughter to a psychologist who might recommend removing her from my care. But it was my only chance to prove that Emma's confusion was manufactured, not organic. My phone buzzed with a text from Derek, * looking forward to family therapy tomorrow. Sarah thinks Emma will really open up with Dr. Williams. Sometimes children need to talk to professionals about things they can't tell their parents. *. I stared at his message, Sarah's calculated manipulation crystallizing in my mind. Tomorrow at 3 p.m., they'd have Emma alone with a therapist who specialized in removing children from their mothers. Today at 10 a.m. was my only chance to stop them. Dr. Chen's office was nothing like the clinical spaces I'd imagined. Soft lighting, comfortable furniture, and toys scattered throughout made it feel more like a friend's living room than a therapist's office. Emma immediately gravitated toward a dollhouse in the corner, her earlier anxiety forgotten. She seems comfortable here, Dr. Chen observed, settling across from me with a notepad. That's a good sign. Children who are genuinely traumatized often show heightened anxiety in new therapeutic settings. For the next 45 minutes, I watched through a one-way window as Dr. Chen engaged Emma in what looked like elaborate games of pretend. Emma arranged the dollhouse family multiple times, narrating complex stories about who lived where and why. At one point, she picked up 2 female figurines and had them arguing over a baby doll. This mommy says she's the real mommy, Emma announced to Dr. Chen, holding up one figure. But this mommy says she's the better mommy. And the baby doesn't know which one to pick. My chest tightened as Emma continued the narrative, having the baby doll cry and ask why it couldn't just have one mommy like the other babies. The psychological sophistication of her play was heartbreaking. She understood exactly what was happening to her, even if she couldn't articulate it directly. Dr. Chen took extensive notes but kept her expression neutral throughout the session. Emma, can you tell me about the people who take care of you? She asked gently. Well, there's Mommy Jess who makes me breakfast and reads stories, Emma said, carefully positioning the dollhouse figures. And there's Mike Daddy who helps with baths and teaches me card games. And there's Daddy Derek who has weekend pancakes. And there's Mommy Sarah who knows lots of rules about kids. That's quite a few people. How does that make you feel? Emma was quiet for a long moment, concentrating on the dollhouse. Sometimes my tummy hurts when I think about it too much. Like when Mommy Sarah asks me questions about Mommy Jess's house, or when Daddy tells me different rules than what Mommy Jess says. What kind of questions does Mommy Sarah ask? Like if Mike Daddy ever gets mad, or if Mommy Jess cries sometimes, or if I like staying at Daddy's house better. Emma's voice got smaller. And she writes things down when I answer. I asked her why, and she said it's to help me not be confused anymore. Dr. Chen's pen stopped moving. How do you feel about Sarah writing things down? Scared, Emma whispered. Because what if I say the wrong thing and then I can't live with Mommy Jess anymore? When the session ended, Dr. Chen walked Emma to the waiting room and gave her stickers while pulling me aside. Jessica, Emma is absolutely being psychologically manipulated, she said quietly. The questions Sarah's been asking are classic coaching techniques designed to elicit responses that can be used against you. Emma's anxiety isn't from family confusion, it's from being interrogated by an adult with an agenda. Relief flooded through me so intensely I nearly cried. So she's not damaged? She's not having some kind of breakdown? She's a remarkably resilient child who's being weaponized by adults she trusts. That's not her fault, and it's not yours. But Jessica, we need to move fast. Sarah's documentation combined with that therapy session tomorrow could create a very different narrative. My phone buzzed with Derek's contact. I let it go to voicemail, but Dr. Chen noticed my hesitation. What is it? I played Derek's message on speaker. Jess, Sarah found out you took Emma to some random psychologist today. That's pretty manipulative, don't you think? Taking our daughter to a stranger to coach her before family therapy? Dr. Williams is going to want to know about this unauthorized evaluation. Dr. Chen's expression hardened. They're monitoring Emma's medical appointments? Apparently. My stomach churned with a horrible realization. How did they even know about this appointment? Only 3 people knew about today's session, Dr. Chen said slowly. You, me, and Catherine Morrison. We stared at each other as the implications sank in. Somewhere in my support system, Derek and Sarah had a source. And tomorrow's therapy ambush was about to become much more dangerous. That night, I sat in my kitchen at 2:47 a.m. with all the pieces finally falling into place. Dr. Chen's revelation about someone monitoring our moves had sent me into investigative overdrive. 3 hours of digging through phone records, email timestamps, and cross-referencing Catherine's communications had led me to the impossible truth. Amanda from work. My confidant, my supposed ally in this custody battle, she'd been feeding Derek information the entire time. Her questions about my rough weekends with the ex suddenly made sense. Her convenient expertise about parental alienation law. Her suggestion to fight fire with fire that had started this whole mess. Amanda had played me perfectly, positioning herself as my supporter while sabotaging me from within. But Amanda had made one crucial mistake. She didn't know I'd figured it out. At 9:15 a.m., I walked into Henderson Marketing with a recording app open on my phone and a plan that would either save Emma or destroy everything. You look terrible, Jess, Amanda said with false concern, perching on my desk with her usual coffee. How did the therapy evaluation go yesterday? It was helpful, I said carefully. Dr. Chen thinks she can provide testimony that will contradict Derek's claims. Amanda's eyes sharpened with interest. What kind of testimony? She documented all of Sarah's coaching techniques with Emma. Apparently, the questions Sarah's been asking constitute psychological manipulation. I watched Amanda's face closely. Catherine thinks we can get Sarah's entire behavioral assessment thrown out. That's wonderful. Amanda's enthusiasm seemed genuine, but I caught her fingers twitching toward her phone. When is Catherine planning to file the countermotion? The trap was set. I'd just given Amanda completely false information about Catherine's strategy and timeline. Tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. sharp, I lied. Catherine wants to beat Derek to the courthouse. Amanda nodded sympathetically, then excused herself for a bathroom break. I counted to 30 and followed her, positioning myself outside the restroom door with my phone recording. Countermotion tomorrow at 9, Amanda was whispering urgently. Sarah needs to move up the Williams appointment to today if possible. No, she doesn't suspect anything. Derek, I've been feeding you information for 3 months, just stick to the plan. I had her. Finally, completely, I had her. But I wasn't done yet. At exactly 2:47 p.m., 16 minutes before Derek was supposed to pick Emma up for the ambush therapy session, I called him with Amanda sitting 3 feet away, pretending to work while obviously listening. Derek, we need to talk, I said, loud enough for Amanda to hear clearly. I know about Amanda. I know about the Bright Beginnings parents who filed complaints about Sarah. I know about Marcus Webb and the Cook County case. And Derek? I know about Dr. Patricia Williams' track record of removing children from their mother's care. The silence stretched so long I thought he'd hung up. I don't know what you're talking about, he finally said, but his voice had lost all its cocky confidence. Catherine Morrison has statements from 5 families who've dealt with Sarah's assessments. She has Amanda's phone records showing 17 calls to you in the past month. And Derek? She has recordings of Sarah coaching Emma with leading questions designed to make me look unfit. Another long pause. Then, what do you want, Jessica? I looked directly at Amanda, whose face had gone completely white. I want you to withdraw any custody petitions. I want Sarah to stay away from Emma's daycare and stop all contact with my daughter. And Derek? I want you to start being the father Emma deserves instead of using her as a weapon against me. And if I refuse? Then Catherine files everything with the family court on Monday morning, including evidence of your systematic parental alienation campaign. Sarah will be facing charges for child psychological abuse, Amanda will lose her job for corporate espionage, and you'll be lucky to keep supervised visitation. The call ended in silence. Amanda stood up slowly, grabbing her purse with shaking hands. Jess, I can explain. Get out, I said quietly. Get out before I call security. She left without another word. At 6:23 p.m., Derek texted, * you win. Sarah and I are done. Emma deserves better than what we put her through. * 3 weeks later, I watched Emma color at our kitchen table, her latest artwork showing a simple family, me, her, and Mike, all holding hands under a bright yellow sun. No question marks, no confusion, no manufactured chaos. Just a little girl who finally knew exactly where she belonged. Mommy, Emma said, looking up with those bright green eyes that mirrored my own, I'm glad I only have one real mommy. Me too, sweetheart, I said, kissing the top of her head. Me too.